Danny Reynolds never wanted to work the night shift. He hated being awake when the world was asleep. But Bills had a way of making choices for you, and when he found the posting for a night orderly at Sunny Pines nursing home, he told himself it wouldn't be so bad. Just keep an eye on things, check on the residents, and make sure everything stays quiet. That's all we ask, the head nurse Martha had said during his interview. She was a heavy-set woman with tired eyes and a forced smile, like she had been there far too long. And whatever you do, don't let them wander. Wander? Danny had asked. Martha sighed. Some of them get confused at night. They don't always know where they are. If you hear anyone moving around, just guide them back to bed. Simple, right? It had seemed simple, but that was before he learned about room 206. The first few nights were uneventful. The nursing home was eerily quiet at night. The halls were dimly lit, and the faint scent of antiseptic clung to everything. Most of the residents were asleep by 9 p.m., leaving Danny with nothing to do but patrol the hallways, listen to the faint hum of the security cameras, and occasionally help an elderly patient find the bathroom. But every night, without fail, he heard whispers coming from room 206. Mrs. Calloway was the resident there, a frail woman in her 90s with silver hair and deep-set watery eyes. Every time Danny peeked inside, she was awake, sitting up in bed, her thin fingers clutching the blanket. And every time she whispered the same thing, "It's under the bed, dear, don't let it get out." At first, Danny brushed it off. Old people said strange things. Maybe she had dementia. Maybe she was dreaming. But then he started to hear it, a slow, rhythmic scratching from beneath the bed. At first, it was soft, just a faint noise like a mouse scurrying behind the walls. But each night, it grew louder, closer, and each night Mrs. Calloway looked more and more terrified. One night, Danny decided to ask Martha about it. "Mrs. Calloway keeps talking about something under her bed," he said casually. "I think she might be seeing things." Martha's face darkened. "She told you that?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, every night." The head nurse's eyes darted to the hallway, as if making sure no one else was listening. She lowered her voice. "Listen, Danny, whatever she says, just ignore it." "Ignore it? She seems really scared." Martha exhaled, rubbing her temples. "Mrs. Calloway has been in room 206 for a long time, longer than anyone else. If she says something is under the bed, just don't look. Understand?" Danny frowned. "Why not?" Martha's expression was unreadable. "Because it's best if you don't." Danny tried to take her advice, but the scratching kept getting worse. It wasn't just under her bed anymore. Some nights he heard it under his own bed at home. Faint, but persistent. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He waited until Mrs. Calloway was asleep, then crouched down beside the bed. He hesitated. "Do not look." Martha's words echoed in his head, but he had to know. Slowly, he lifted the blankets and peered underneath. The darkness was too deep. More than just a shadow. It was a void. As if the space under the bed went on forever. And in that void, something moved. Danny's breath caught in his throat. Fingers. Pale, too many fingers crawling toward him like spiders. He scrambled back, heart pounding, barely suppressing a scream. Mrs. Calloway whimpered in her sleep. "You shouldn't have looked, dear. Now it knows you're here." From that night on, things got worse. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. Shadows moved where there should be none. The security cameras in room 206 flickered, showing only static whenever Danny checked them. Then one night, Mrs. Calloway disappeared. Her bed was empty, the sheets neatly folded. There was no sign of a struggle. The door was locked from the inside. Danny searched everywhere, but she was simply gone. That was when he saw it. The covers on the bed were slightly lifted at the edges, like something had crawled out, or in. Panicked, Danny tried to leave. He ran down the hall toward the exit. But something changed. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. The walls warped, the doors twisted. The fluorescent lights above flickered and buzzed like dying fireflies. And then the scratching began again. Not from under the bed this time, from under his own feet. The floorboards bulged. Something was underneath, moving, crawling, Rising, a hand burst through the tiles, pale and bony, its fingers reaching for him. Danny screamed and stumbled back, but another hand grabbed his ankle. He kicked and thrashed, but the grip tightened, pulling him down into the impossible darkness. The last thing he saw before the world went black was room 206's door, wide open, waiting. Sunny Pines nursing home continued as usual. A new night orderly was hired, a young woman named Claire. On her first night, she was given a simple set of instructions. Just keep an eye on things, check on the residents, and make sure everything stays quiet. And whatever you do, don't let them wander. Claire nodded, smiling. That's simple enough. She walked past room 206 without a second thought. Inside, the bed was occupied once again. A man sat up, his eyes hollow, his face pale. Danny, his lips barely moved as he whispered, "It's under the bed, dear. Don't let it get out."